The kids of Elm Street don't know it yet, but something is coming to get them.
There's something out there, isn't there?
You just see cuts happening. What did they have to tell? I don't know. The coroner got to say. He's in the jar and puking since he saw her. They're gonna kill me for sure.
Did you do it?
There was somebody else there.
He was locked in a room with a girl who went in alive and came out in a rubber bag.
No one knows where it came from or who it will visit next.
Nancy? There's something wrong with you. You're imagining things.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Do you believe in the boogeyman?
No.
Whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
She's the only one who can stop it. If she fails,
I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy.
no one will survive. From Wes Craven, director of The Hills Have Eyes and Last House on the Left, a new masterpiece in fantasy terror, Nightmare on Elm Street.
Okay, you're watching Movie Night Extravaganza. I am, of course, your host, Forrest Miller, and I'm here with my co-host, J. Andrew World.
I'm your co-host now, Forsty.
Kristina Oakes, who streams on Twitch. I couldn't find like the name of the. I mean, is there a name for a Twitch stream, or like, you know, is it just?
It's my username.
Okay,
so it's just whatever.
Yeah. And of course, Rayyvana, who streams on the TYT's Twitch channel and has Rayy-Actions is the name of the show and has her own Twitch stream. We haven't really had that many Twitch streamers besides like Kenzo on here. I don't think it's kind of
nice to infiltrate then.
Mm-hmm.
Twitch takeover.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Twitch is more like streamer centric, and YouTube is kind of more like show centric. If that makes sense, because obviously it's not like first a streamers platform. It was like first just a video platform. So it's, you know, I think our tools are a little less functional.
Twitch is definitely more engagement centric than YouTube. More audience engagement in the moment. They love getting your attention.
Mm-hmm.
So tonight we're going to be talking about Wes Craven's original Nightmare on Elm Street, with, you know, the uncancelable Freddy Krueger.
We're going to try.
And the easily cancelable Johnny Depp, I guess. I mean,
Justice for Johnny Depp.
if there was one of those two that deserved cancellation, I'd say Freddy Krueger, you know, far more than Johnny Depp. But you know what? Life takes the toll it does, I guess. Nightmares are a much better platform, I guess, than movies and TV to survive in. So I have a Wes Craven clip to kind of intro this. It's about the actual, like, it's Wes Craven talking about the actual true story of how both Freddy Krueger was inspired and like the idea of kind of nightmares that end up killing you, which is based on a true story of you know, immigrants from like Laos and Cambodia who had been kind of recruited a lot of times by the CIA during the Vietnam War, and ended up like a few of them started having these nightmares, and there started being these deaths that they couldn't explain, where kids would go to sleep and their parents would be like, oh, everything's fine after coming, you know, after the Vietnam War is over, because, you know, coming over from Vietnam and Laos, and like of course you're gonna have traumatic nightmares, but like some of the kids started dying, and they never really put it together that these were like connected stories. So they would have one story in the newspaper one day and another story in the newspaper another day. And Wes Craven saw like a bunch of them and was like, wait a second, I just started reading this. Like, how is nobody making these connections? So he decided to make this movie.
Nightmare on Elm Street is kind of interesting. I read a newspaper article in the LA Times about a recent immigrant to the United States, a young man who had complained to his parents about severe nightmares. I think they were from Cambodia, and he was assured that nightmares were, not that unusual. He shouldn't be so afraid, and he started staying up and refusing to sleep, and the family became very concerned, and they sought the help of a doctor. The doctor prescribed sleeping pills. The young man apparently took them, and in the end, it turned out he did not. He was taking them and putting them aside. He had a coffee pot in his room after a while to stay awake, and nobody knew quite what to do. At one point, he was downstairs watching television in the middle of the night, and he fell asleep, and his family noticed finally that he was asleep, and they brought him up to his bed. The whole family went to bed themselves, thinking, thank God, finally he's sleeping. Heard screams an hour later, ran into his room. He was thrashing in his bed. By the time they got to him, he was dead. And over the next 9 months, I found 2 more articles like that. So I wrote it and thought it was the best thing since sliced bread, and then spent 3 years trying to get somebody to fund it. When I think about 7 years old, I was just about to fall asleep, and I heard this shuffling down the sidewalk and mumbling. And I went to the window. I was in a second-story apartment with, living with my family in Cleveland, and there was this man that looked pretty much like Freddy ended up looking. And I assume now he was probably a drunk, but at that time he was just this dark man. And he stopped, and he happened to look directly up into the window and right into my eyes. Now, I don't know how he knew to stop, how he knew a kid was watching, but somehow he did. And it just stopped my breath in my throat. And I backed away from the window with him just staring at me until he couldn't see me, and stood back there in the shadows and counted, And I don't know what I counted to, 100 or 200 or whatever, but I didn't hear him. And I thought he must have gone by now, but I would have heard him, but he couldn't just be standing there. And I went back, and he was there, and he just went, like this with this big leer. And then he sort of capped himself by starting to walk down the sidewalk, still looking over his shoulder at me, and then turned the corner and walked towards the entrance of our building, which was out of my sight. But so I remember running through the house, dark house, and going to the front door and putting my ear to it and hearing the door downstairs open, the door to the lobby of the building. Whereupon I woke up everybody in the house, everybody in the apartment, and my brother went down with a baseball bat. And by the time I had awakened everybody in the stir, this guy had disappeared. But that memory became the essence of Freddy, because that guy, whoever the hell he was, enjoyed scaring the shit out of a kid. And that, extrapolating that and taking that to the nth degree, I think you have the kind of mentality of older men that can send young men off to war, or a generation that always hates the music of a young generation because it's threatening to them, because they are the ones inheriting new life, whereas the older people are the ones inheriting old age.
Yeah, so I don't know. I found that fascinating that it's like those two different stories, because number one, I guess you can just imagine, like some old drunk guy just kind of standing outside of a building and seeing a kid looking at him, and the guy looking back and the kid looking at him, and then freaking out.
Mm-hmm.
But Wes Craven's face is just so expressive. He has those giant eyes. So the way that he does the leer is I've watched a bunch of interviews now for the show, and he kind of does it he does it better and better in each one that
And his voice is so calm, chill, very deadpan. You could tell he should have won an Oscar for New Nightmare.
Absolutely, I second that.
He's a former teacher and professor. That's kind of what his original job was. You were saying before this that he originally wanted to be a porn director too.
Yep, he had those aspirations.
But which is interesting that Sean Cunningham, who did Friday the 13th, those movies, together with Wes Craven, they created Last House on the Left.
Yeah.
Which is, which was like at the time like the goriest movie that anyone had come up with, and apparently he had taken a leave of absence from teaching Wes Craven to help make that, and then everybody pretty much, like he said that like in academia that he was friends with kind of like shunned him, and they were just like, what the fuck, you made this like the most graphic movie of all time, like, and you really wanted to still be our friend, like.
Yeah, it was like almost like a revenge porn type of film, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen it, but like it's been referenced now.
Oh, one of the villains in it is named Fred Krueger, which is also the name of the high school bully that tormented Wes Craven as a child.
Yeah.
So
I remember reading about that.
Yeah.
Well, who doesn't want to make a scary movie that you're just like you call out your high school bully or whatever, and you're like, listen, this is you, that pedophile that comes with 15, that's you.
Hey, he was a child murderer.
Yeah. But
and the remake they made, well, he originally wanted him to be a pedophile, which they're like, Wes, that's too much. That's too dark.
What I actually am kind of curious about is Disney was interested in making this movie, but they wanted to take out all the scary parts. So
what would the movie be?
Yeah.
I have no clue, but it just sounds like a hoot. Like I just want to know what Disney's pitched to Wes Craven going, we like your script, but here's the rewrites we want, and what they were. But were
finger knives supposed to be then? Like
sausages?
I don't know. Like what?
We love the idea of kids falling asleep. We hate the idea of kids getting murdered. So is there some kind of middle ground that we can reach where
you'd be like a Willy Wonka character?
Oh God,
I had to play him.
I wanted to do so like as you saw at the beginning of this, this has been Murder Night Extravaganza for the last 3 weeks, right? Of shows, or 2 weeks.
Yeah,
I don't know.
However long, 17 days.
So the last 17 days has been Murder Night Extravaganza. We've been kind of tracing the history of slasher movies, and then kind of also the history of zombie movies, I guess, because we did our last episode was Dawn of the Dead, so we talked a lot about that too. But I feel like you can kind of sort them into 3 categories, and the first one is like the Halloween and Friday the 13th style, like if you have sex you die, which we talked a lot about on the Halloween episode that we did on Tuesday. The fact that that's not like a rule that John Carpenter ever thought of, or his girlfriend that co-wrote it with him ever thought of at the time. Like they just wanted to make teenagers that behaved like teenagers. But this movie kind of introduces a new rule, which is like if you fall asleep, you die, which I think is a far more terrifying slasher rule than like, because you could just go the whole movie and just not have sex. And, or like, you know what I mean? Like, you'd be like, well, and like, if I was going to do this, like, maybe I wouldn't have sex for this amount of time. But like, you can't not fall asleep.
Yeah. Because, I mean, Johnny Depp was a virgin when he died.
Poor guy.
Because, like, if there's one where you're most vulnerable.
Oh, That is a good thought to.
I thought it was a dramatic pause.
She's still holding. Just
man, Shatter got nothing on her
besides being in a bathroom.
You froze for that entire answer up until you froze from most vulnerable.
Damn internet! I'm telling you guys, it doesn't want me to do this. But yeah, when you're at your most vulnerable, you're into sleep. So of course you're gonna get attacked.
Yeah, and that's it's a long-standing kind of idea because Psycho, which is the first slasher movie that we did, like Janet Leigh famously didn't take a shower ever again after being in that movie because she was like, I realized like how vulnerable you could actually, like, watching her own death on screen kind of traumatized her. And then she was like, well, like thinking about it, like how vulnerable you would be in a shower, or you are in a shower. I like never wanted to shower again. Like I was kind of traumatized by my own situation, which then of course Jamie Lee Curtis is her daughter. Mm-hmm. So then she didn't take showers as a kid, which kind of was a cool through line between between Psycho and Halloween, because those were the 2 episodes that we had done back to back on that. But yeah, but this is like a whole new level of vulnerable because yeah, for like 12 to 14 hours or whatever amount of time that like if you're a kid like that you're sleeping, like you're completely vulnerable for like half the day.
It's also like I think interesting just because, and they touched on this a little when they were doing the sleep study, something that I have intimate experience with, someone with narcolepsy, but that we don't know that much about sleep. Like doctors, scientists really don't know that much about how it works, the psychology behind it, and dreams more specifically. So it's just such a gray area in our knowledge that like including that into like the horror of it is just like we still don't know. Like it just makes it even more like scary, I thought at least.
Yeah. That's what I like about the scene where Nancy's getting her sleep study done and her mom's like, what the hell are dreams? And doctor's like, we don't really know what dreams are. I'm like, this is 1984 and it's 2021. And they still don't really know what dreams are. Like what causes them, why we have them. I'm like, come on, guys. We know more about outer space than inner space.
and that's half your day. I mean, or a good portion of your day, really, like 8 hours out of your day. Every day. Yeah. But I mean, when you're a kid, like that's, you sleep more as a kid than you do, I think, as an adult, like depending on the kid, obviously, and the various mental illnesses that develop during that time. But, I mean, presumably speaking, like, but they're also, I wanted to go back to the thing you're saying about Disney wanting this movie originally. There's a fairy tale element to it, like a big fairy tale element. But, I think in America, we kind of focus on the fairy tales that are like nice, like, or at least, the person's heroic in them and not like maybe the fairy tales where like a witch devours you.
Yeah. It's like a Grimm's fairy tale. Like they probably were like, after like looking at tons of Grimm's fairy tales going, I don't know. Oh, hey, the script about this this nightmare demon sounds like a perfect thing we can turn into a Disney film.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And also too, like Disney released the Black Cauldron back in '85, which was a flunk, and that was one of the darker Disney films. So it's like, hey, maybe we shouldn't do this nightmare thing.
Yeah, which that movie, I saw that in the theater.
Yeah, first VHS I ever owned.
But I don't know. I mean, so there's that element of it, but then there's also, the stories that we get told as, especially like, I mean, in like in the millennial generation or before that, like Gen X, like it's kind of the, people will just kind of kidnap you stories that a lot of parents tell because we have like, we have news sensationalizes everything and makes it really seem like kids are getting kidnapped everywhere. Like I remember being a kid and my mom being like, listen, if you just talk to any strangers, like that stranger could just turn around and pick you up and kidnap you. So you have that kind of fear really just built into you, I think. And this movie capitalizes on like, the feeling of like that kind of person, but you could do everything right and then fall asleep and get completely traumatized by a sleep pedophile or,
the nightmare pedophile. I thought like, but I don't know. After watching the movie, I just sat and thought about how like funny it was, how concerned the parents were about Freddy Krueger when they murdered him, but how little concern they seem to have now. Like even the idea, like even if they weren't going to buy that he was a dream demon, that aside, like aside from the mom putting bars on the doors and locking it, like they didn't seem very worried about finding this murderer. Like the dad's like, oh, I'm down at the station working to catch this murderer. But like when anyone's trying to give him information, he's like, just shut the fuck up. Okay.
Yeah.
Just go back to your drunk mom and shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Like, you guys are just seemingly, and I mean, it was a big ACAB film, right? The police
Yes.
were utterly useless.
Yeah.
Which is true in real life.
She's screaming and her dad says like, lady, we'll get your dad. Don't worry about it. But with with Nancy, she's one of the first characters that is like a child of divorce in the 80s. We had like this 50 suburb image of what a family was, but she was the child of divorced parents. Her parents really didn't have much concern about her, if you really think about it. So the fact that she was the strong character, I'm like, how the hell did these two people create that type of daughter?
And there's this trope I think that first comes up in Halloween, which is the cop father that just doesn't listen to his daughter. And I mean, this takes it to like an extreme level. I mean, I think it starts with Black Christmas in 1974, which there's no cop. The cop isn't the father, but like the police are completely useless. Like they keep going to the police, and despite the fact that people are getting murdered, like the cops just can't like process. Like the cops just keep fucking everything up, and they're just so ridiculously bad at being cops that like it's like a running joke throughout the movie. And this kind of takes it to the next level, which is like she's telling her dad like, "Hey, this is what's happening. I even know the guy's name." And the dad's like, yeah. Listen, there's murders going on, honey. And it's like, and he's completely like in whatever like father mode. Like, oh, don't worry, just go home, go to sleep. I'll be there soon. But then he turns around, he's like, my daughter's fucking crazy. Just don't fucking.
Like the useless cop trope is definitely there's probably like a horror film like checklist, and I bet like teens having sex, useless cops are probably two of the top like off the checklist.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think these lists really formulate with this era of movies. Like I don't think they really existed before this, but of course, more than anybody else, Wes Craven is kind of obsessed with these rules because I mean he's the one that made Scream, so like these rules that kind of get put out, these tropes are something that I think he's extremely attuned to. So it's funny to watch his version of like a cop father just be like, honey, there are murders going on. I know you're crazy. Your friends keep dying. Just go home, relax. I'm going to solve these murders. Yeah, we don't have any of these.
I mean, it kind of does explain how he ends up being the way he is in Nightmare 3, though.
I wanted to introduce this clip into the record, and it's about.
What are we having a trial?
How?
Like,
yeah. No, I always say that because I think it's funny to be like, it's not.
Who are you putting on trial this week?
No, it's not because of a trial. It's because I'm listening to the Robert Caro LBJ books. So like they're like, oh, I'd like to introduce this into the Senate record. So I've been saying that the last few weeks. It's the first time anyone's mentioned it. So this is a great place to start this clip on. But this is Wes Craven talking about how he picked the claw as a weapon, and I think it really puts this movie perfectly into the slasher chronology.
At that time, it was Halloween, and there was several other films that featured unusual instruments, and I was thinking, well, okay, what will it be? Chainsaw this or sickle or scythe or whatever. And I said, well, take yourself, from my academic background, I take yourself back to the earliest phenomenon that you can. And I thought, okay, take yourself back to primal man, to mankind when he was not equipped with shields or weapons. What did he confront? And it was, tooth and claw. So I literally said, I had read an article about how the cave bears would reach around through the crevices that early man would be hiding in and hook them out with these claws. And I said, well, that's got to be buried deeply in the subconscious, that whole idea of the claw. So I simply put that onto what I thought was the most human instrument, which was the hand. The reality of real life is that you have a huge spectrum of organisms all trying to rend each other open to get at their protein. It's what I think, who was it? Somebody said we're a series of tubes trying to put the other tubes in one end and excrete it out the other. I mean, that's the darkest view of life itself. So one of the deepest fears of any critter, and certainly of human beings, is being opened up. That the skin is so thin, and it takes so very little to spill us out into the world, and our existence literally ceases at the merest opening. So it's important in a way in a horror film to deal with that reality. And I think that's why horror films so often go down to a slashing instrument. It is because that is the primal fear.
Also, squeezing a stuntman through spandex is pretty scary too.
No, but I mean, I don't know. I think I haven't thought about that. You know what I mean? I haven't thought about cutting anyone open lately. I haven't thought about how really that is like the most primal fear, is being slashed open. Like, you know what I mean? Like you get any kind of cut, and you're bleeding and you're bleeding and you're bleeding a lot of times, and for like a very small cut, like you think about like if somebody opens you all the way up, like the primal fear of being devoured, which kind of is also the same thing as like zombies, like like from the beginning of time, like creatures eating us has been a fear that we really have just in our subconscious, in our most like primal level.
Or the time I hallucinated, I saw a dinosaur and thought it was going to ram me. I just had visions of my gut spilling out as its horns tore through my car. It was a fun night.
I told you not to do acid while driving.
No, that was just sheer exhaustion. I did an 8-hour work day, then went to go see a concert in Albany, and then was driving down to New Jersey after the concert.
Who doesn't love an old Albany dinosaur experience?
Yes. One of my first horror, because I became desensitized to horror films because of my papa, my grandfather. And when I would be doing my math practice work, he would be watching Aliens, was New Nightmare, Nightmare on Elm Street. And one of the first memories I have of a horror film is actually Freddy Krueger. I was like 7 years old. And there's this scene where
it wasn't a nightmare. He was visiting you.
Yeah, well, no, it was real. He never visited me in nightmares. It's weird. I never had a nightmare about Freddy. That's how desensitized I was.
Not yet.
Most of the time, he's just joking around in my dreams. It's weird.
Yeah, we just hang out.
Yeah, sharpening those knives for him. But
go to the manicure.
Yeah,
he's like, I'm sorry, I can't really be a big
Freddy.
part of your dream tonight. I have another kid's dream that I have to get to in 15 minutes, and my schedule is just so tight lately.
Yeah,
just trauma dumping on you in your dream.
I don't know. But like my mom was like, you can't be watching these films with Kristina in the room, and I'm over here like, the child puked on the mom, and then Freddy got with the claws. It was cool.
My favorite Freddy moment in this movie is when he has the stuff like spewing out of his hand, and he's
like he's cutting off his fingers. He's like, watch this.
Yeah,
and he's got all the green goo.
Robert Englund's face when he does that is like, look at this, and it's like I mean, it's like he's definitely like a comical villain, but in some ways that makes it even more terrifying. You know what I mean? That like this like almost cartoon character like of a person is able to come into your dreams, and like I love when she sets up like the booby traps at the end, and he gets
It goes all Home Alone.
Like,
yeah. Like I remember because I saw Home Alone before this, and I remember watching it like, this is Home Alone, isn't it? And everyone's like, this was before Home Alone. I'm like,
yeah, Home Alone ripped this movie off.
Yeah.
It would be hilarious to have a Joe Pesci Freddy Krueger. So you have to like set up all the traps.
What is that?
Two youths over here.
Hey, what's a grit?
I did like how he was so not immune to the booby traps. Like he just got comically hit in the stomach with a sledgehammer and was like, oh, fell on the floor for a while, but then set on fire, was like, all right, time to kill this bitch's mom. Like now I'm fine. I've been rejuvenated.
Also, his stunt double it was like 200 and something pounds. So it was so obvious when Freddy was on fire that it was not Robert Englund.
Yeah,
I was like, he's expanding. What's going on?
I have to grab this later on. Matthew Film Guy, who was couldn't make it to the stream tonight, but this is one of his favorite movies. He dressed up, I think it is bar mitzvah. He did a bar mitzvah thing as Freddy Krueger. But he said, I had to walk through backyard to my friend's house and mine late at night the first time I saw Nightmare on Elm Street. And it was one of the most genuinely freaked out by a film I ever was.
At least it wasn't his circumcision with Freddy Krueger, because that just would be bad.
1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. it's your circumcision.
That's
fresh meat.
Oh god.
The most scared I've ever been by a movie was in my adult life, and it was Hereditary. I drove home from the movie theater with the lights on in the car because I was misled. I did not know it was a scary movie. I thought it was a family film. It kind of was. There was a family involved, but I, as a 19-year-old adult, slept in my mom's bed that night because I was too scared to fucking sleep in my own room.
Girl, you weak. We need to get you to watch some more horror films just to get you desensitized.
No, it's only gonna make it worse. I don't need any new sleep paralysis demons. Okay, I've got enough.
I pranked my mom after watching Hereditary, and I waited for her to be in the kitchen like cooking food. We had just watched it like an hour or two before that, and I started doing that over and over again, but like in the other room, so it would echo off. And all of a sudden, she just started cursing me out. And like, chased me downstairs. I was like, "What the fuck?" I was like,
oh god. Also, quick note: I'm gonna send this to my friend because at one time she actually did a podcast interview with Robert Englund at one point, talk about the film. If you guys remember, I don't know if you do, but Freddy Krueger was the Phantom of the Opera at one point, and it's the film that everyone forgets. It's a slasher Phantom film.
That's my 12th birthday movie.
Yeah, so, I mean it's basically Freddy Krueger as the Phantom of the Opera. Like he's got deformity. He murders victims. He skins the victims. He sews the skin on his face. He removes it, kills more victims. And Robert Englund played the Phantom in this, and it was like 1989. And my friend did an interview with him recently about it. So I'm like, hey Tammy, I'm gonna just send you this so you know that Robert has something to watch later.
Well, he does lots of podcast interviews, which is really interesting.
He should come on here.
Now that I know that, I'll I feel like out of everybody we know, JG Michael will be like, "Oh, you want to have Robert Englund on your podcast? Why didn't you tell me?"
Yeah. He would be doing most of the talking though, because he's quite the talker. I mean, which is great though. That means he's such a nice guy.
Well, he's also a London trained actor. Like he's not. Which makes it like really fascinating. Like he's an actor that was doing a lot of and a surfer, which is a cool combination. But he's like an actor that was that's like well trained, like knows what he's talking about, is incredibly serious about acting as a profession, and then gets known for playing Freddy Krueger, which is those two things like side by side are hilarious. Like
they actually did an episode of The Goldbergs about Nightmare on Elm Street where Robert Englund played Freddy Krueger like one last time. This was like a couple of years ago, and they like did the whole thing where Adam was terrified of Freddy Krueger, and his girlfriend at the time gives him like a magazine that gets in detail about how horror movies are made, and he's like, "Hey, did you know that the guy who plays Freddy Krueger is just a Shakespearean trained actor? Like he's really a nice guy." And I'm like,
they actually were going for a different direction when they cast Freddy Krueger, because the first guy they cast, they even got as far as makeup tests, and you can see pictures online of this. But he was the guy who played the devil and Time Bandits. I'm blanking on the guy's name, but he's an older British actor. And they then it fell through with him. And then they got the guy who's most famous for playing Michael Myers, Hooper.
Yeah,
it's like that big dude.
The guy that was in Rob Zombie's
yeah.
I
think this was like they tried for him to play Freddy Krueger,
which is funny because on like the same level as somebody like misreading how Freddy Krueger is supposed to be played. Michael Myers, the scary thing is that he's like an average size, like what I mean, like supernatural, but like average size guy that could keep just coming at you and not dying. So
it is graceful.
He's a dancer.
Yeah, graceful guys are scary.
He's got dancer's legs. No, but so it's funny, like it's funny to have that guy miscast, I think, as Michael Myers, and then to have the miscast guy, miscast as Michael Myers, looked at for Freddy Krueger, and then Robert Englund as like a skinny, like like a skinny, like he was kind of, I think he was muscly at the time, but he was like skinny and small.
Yeah, he was wiry. I mean, if you ever see him on V, he was like the skinny dweeby alien who could barely speak English.
I know. Willie.
Really, yes.
Kind Willie. Like going from that to Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh, David Warner. Yes, that is absolutely who I'm talking about. And his
by the way, I like how every time I send up a comment, you guys go between the legs. I don't think you can cancel Freddy Krueger when I keep doing that. Yeah, well, I have the story of his casting that I clipped,
My man.
and so I'll play that now. I think it's relevant.
I'm sort of to put it politely, a conversationalist. I'm a jabbermouth, but I sort of forced myself to shut up and let Wes do all the talking at that particular interview because I was really not correct for the part. I think they wanted a 6'4" stuntman or something originally, and I sort of just sat there and I was going to force myself to listen to Wes and not say anything and just sort of stare and let him look at the potential my face had for makeup or for being scary or whatever. And it was so easy because Wes is such a raconteur, and he was telling this great kind of strange concept he had for the original Nightmare film. And it was all I could do to kind of go, oh, tell me more, Uncle Wes. It was like it's just this great story that he was telling, and that was my first meeting with him. Wes sort of set the blueprint and the Bible for the entire Elm Street series, and whenever we have strayed from that, I think the films have suffered somewhat. When we've broken Wes's rules, I think the films, or at least sequences of the films, have suffered. With Wes, I feel a little more beholden to protecting Freddy. Wes sort of knows there's a fine line with Freddy's dark sense of humor, a kind of a cruel clown, as they would have it in sort of the Roman theater sense. But Wes I don't have to protect it with Wes. He understands where that line is. With other directors, there's a tendency to allow me to either improvise too much or to end a sequence on something jokey or humorous, even if it's black humorous and dark humor of Freddy, and not to have that alternative take that might be just cruel and downright mean, which in post-production I really think is necessary because you don't really know where that balance is going to fall until you get in there in editorial. And Wes sort of has that instinct right on the set. And when he's steering on the set, you kind of know which way to err in the direction of, whether to go for the dark or whether to bring in that kind of dark sense of humor that Wes sort of blueprinted for Freddy.
Because they're comedies.
No, but I mean, it's the rules of reality don't really apply in Nightmare on Elm Street because obviously it's a dream, which is I think why he's so susceptible to like a sledgehammer. You know what I mean? Like once you enter the dream logic and you start going by the logic of like what happens in your subconscious, you can do things that I think really affect someone like Freddy Krueger a lot more than they would affect like a normal horror movie villain. But at the same time, he can do things that are like, really outrageous because obviously you're dreaming. And as long as you don't break as long as you don't make it completely illogical, like there really are no limits to what he can do.
Yeah. That's what I liked about even like with the sequels is how the deaths became more personal, like specifically the fears that a lot of the characters had. Like one character was terrified of cockroaches, one character wasn't anorexic, one character had asthma. So with the first film, there wasn't a whole lot of there was creativity with the death scenes, don't get me wrong, but they weren't so personal and specific. Like Johnny Depp getting sucked into a mattress, that's scary, and how they did with the blood and all that. And Tina's death, constantly getting like tossed all over the ceiling and on the walls, that's creative. But those deaths didn't have anything to do with their specific fears, besides getting chased by a madman with finger knives.
What was the name of the Tina's boyfriend? Rod, I think. That was the one death that was like distinct because he made it look like he hung himself, which in that moment I was like, okay, that was the correct choice, because if you slash him, it's like, how did he slash himself when he was alone in this jail cell?
Yeah, those parents would have still been like, listen, I don't know what happened, but
they thought he committed suicide. The parents are the worst.
Yeah, he got really crazy. He somehow got a razor blade past us, and man, woo!
Yeah,
don't go in there.
I like how not only is it though that he dies, but it's also that they're introducing how vengeful the parents are. and like this community is, because really like the central theme is that everybody is this is like a vigilante town. You know what I mean? Like if the law can't punish them, because the law, which is funny that the law is like her father, but but like if the law can't punish them, we will. And so when there's when they're doing the funeral scene, they're kind of introducing how quick the parents are to kind of become judgmental vigilantes, because the priest is like, his life and death attest to scripture's warning that he who lives by the sword shall die by the sword. But let us recall also our Lord's admonition that we judge not lest we be judged. I really fucked that up, but but like, you know what I mean? Like even the priest is like really judgmental. Like, this kid died because he's a fucked up kid and he's violent. But like, also, let's remember that God said, don't judge him too harshly. But you can see how fast this community specifically gets to the point where they're like, listen, this kid is a murderer. We don't need any evidence besides finding his dead girlfriend. He's the one in there. Like, so I found that as like it's cool foreshadowing, I guess, to when the alcoholic mother is finally like, oh, I'm the one, like we're the ones that burned, the original Fred Krueger alive, and here's his weapons. And
which brings me to my whole point, is that Freddy Krueger is innocent in this movie and in part 2. Once you get past part 2, this is not true anymore. But with the first 2, which is why, and the reason why you have to bring up part 2 is because the first victim in part 2 is the real killer. The gym coach is the first victim in part 2. So for those of you who haven't seen it, and
it's the gayest horror film of all time.
Yes, it's like a big analogy of like being gay and trying to deal with it. And I totally missed it because I'm straight and don't understand any of this. So as somebody put, there's a great video online from Matt Baum, who I highly recommend his channel. Who posted it years ago, and I'm just like, oh, that makes sense. But
listen,
all the
Freddy's coming for you.
Yeah, all the close up of his crotch, like who would have thought?
I missed
him
it.
Like the kids dancing.
The butt shots.
Oh god, like I'm like, what the hell's going on? I'm like, this was so different from part 1. At least with part 1, like there was more motivation for why Freddy did what he did, was revenge for the fact that the parents completely like offed him. Now, what I wonder is, why keep the finger knives? Why keep the glove?
So she has something to stir, she wants to stir her drinks with something.
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah. Trophy. Lynchings back in the day also they took trophies, which is not talked about. They would take skull, skin. People. There's actually people in the South who still have Bibles with bookmarks made from people who they lynched. So this isn't that far big of a stretch. It's not talked about, so we don't have that in popular culture that much.
And taking down someone who like murdered children too. So it's like, hey, we have this as a reminder of the good that we did.
Yes.
But did they not think he was going to come back?
Well, no, but it takes a psychological toll on the mother, and you can assume that maybe that moment is probably what split up her parents' marriage with the
why
mother.
She's an alcoholic, and
yeah.
So there's actually a cut scene that's actually really interesting about how
the sibling.
There was this older sister that got killed, that she didn't know about. So it made it a little more personal about the whole thing.
Which they should not have cut out that scene, in my opinion, because it would have made the parents' motivation for what they did a lot, especially regarding Nancy's safety, made more sense. Because the only complaint I really have about Nightmare is I'm like, there's just something missing to really tie everything in. And when I heard about the fact that there was a deleted scene, which you can watch on YouTube, it's out there. I'm like,
the truth is out there.
That was it. That was what was missing.
Do your own research.
Yes.
No, but I don't necessarily feel like anything's missing. Like I don't necessarily feel like we need to know more information, just for the fact that I enjoyed the fact that whether or not it's justified that the parents the parents went around and killed Fred Krueger at the old boiler room house, whether or not that's justified, it still takes a psychic toll on somebody So the fact that the mother is like dousing herself in liquor now and is drunk all the time, and and is unable to even like function as a normal person, and the father is like in law enforcement, which like it's interesting to think like, did he get involved as a cop before or after all of this happened? Is he like, oh, well, I have to protect my daughter, which he does a terrible job at, but still like all of these questions can be raised from how vague it is. I think.
There's also the issue where like the mom says that the cops fucked up filling out a search warrant, and that's why he got off. So then it raises like the question, was it him that did it? And then that's why he feels so impotent in this scenario. Like,
yes, that's probably what it is.
That's better film analysis than most.
I mean, it really does specifically connect the Thompsons to the whole situation. Then, specifically why he would want to target Nancy and the parents. Then, Ray just solved the mystery.
and also presumably, the mother taking some kind of lead role. Like now she's kind of just like a far gone alcoholic. Just like, honey, look, I have this I could protect, like, but presumably the courage that Nancy shows throughout this movie that's innate within her, springs from can spring from the fact that maybe the mother was in the lead role of taking on Fred Krueger in some capacity, and that was inside of her, and like, the drive to be that intense about it was inside of her, and maybe that's been transferred to Nancy. So you see like the shell of a person who's actually, whether or not it was justified, like gone through this whole thing, and then at the end of it is the shell of a human being drinking, like like not a good mother. But you can see the roots of that, I guess, in both of them if you want to look for that.
Yeah. There's also like the mother doesn't want to accept that she didn't finish the job, right? Like in her mind, she did what she needed to do to keep Nancy safe. She took it to such an extreme level. There's no possible way in her mind that she didn't protect her in that moment, and that Freddy Krueger could still be a risk to her daughter. She just refuses to accept that, regardless of the fact that Nancy woke up with this fucking hat in her hand. Like,
yeah. And she rocking the gray hairs.
Which they did have an all gray wig, by the way. They never used it, but they tried it on, and you can see photos online of her rocking a full gray. I'm glad I didn't go that route, but
props to Heather Langenkamp though. I mean, she really is such a great final girl. She really does such an amazing job at playing someone who was already very, very strong and just had to act out on it.
Yeah, and she had only done commercials up to this point too.
Mm-hmm. And most of the final girls are either dumb blondes, they get killed off right away, or they're weak but end up finding their own strength. That's why Nancy kind of stands out, because she was always pretty headstrong and curious. So that's what made, my opinion, Nancy's my favorite final girl in any of the Nightmare films.
She's also, she's the final girl, not just because, starting out with, in the chronology of this, I guess, is Jamie Lee Curtis kind of finding her friends dead at the end of Halloween. And deciding in further movies, I guess, to take on Michael Myers, but not necessarily doing that as in that movie as I'm gonna summon my strength. The reason that I get to defeat, the reason I get to survive is that I've defeated this this evil within the movie itself. In this, she very quickly decides listen, I have to be the one. My parents have failed me. Everything's kind of failed me. Nobody believes my story. They just assume oh, you're traumatized by this. Which for once in a horror movie, the trauma of it is definitely acknowledged, but then the trauma is treated as oh, listen, we can't trust anything you say after that because you're going through trauma right now. It can't it has to be just this one thing that you're traumatized by. It can't be a permanent change. So I appreciate the fact that Freddy Krueger is defeated in this because she takes initiative. And not just because she survives till the end, or she's evading something, or
she just bullies him into non-existence.
Yeah.
I'm if you try to do anything, that's what they did in It Chapter 2. They just you know what? we're not gonna take this anymore. We're just gonna like tell this thing that it's nothing and it'll die. And I'm like,
Just
That's what's happening to
gaslight
Dave
him out of
Chappelle right now.
existence.
yeah, that's
Dave
basically what
Chappelle is
happened.
like fading into that blue light, just like Freddy Krueger did at the end of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Freddy Krueger starts telling trans jokes, and then everyone's like, Freddy Krueger, you're done. I am not giving you any more energy.
He's got, like,
Yeah.
touring with like alt-right comedians talking about getting canceled.
You know what's interesting is
Killed
like
20
when,
kids.
when there's if there's ever there needs to be like one more Nightmare movie with Robert Englund. They can CGI, they can do whatever, they can have a young stunt double. You know, there's so much that you can do now to actually replicate that. And he always thought about like pushing the limit, like, you know, what if Freddy teased someone about like their autism or something like that, like, or anything that, you know, their depression, their anxiety, their learning disability, like something that they like fear that people would constantly mock them over or something like that, or toy with someone with OCD. I'm like, oh my God, if you were to do like a dirty, disgusting room and tease someone who has severe OCD, I'm like, that would be quite interesting. So I do wonder.
Socks on the floor. Socks.
I'll just start crawling towards you or something like that.
Oh,
Get the
what's
best of
this?
socks.
I knocked over your dresser. They're like,
Yeah, have Freddy turn into like a red and green tabby cat and just have him like knock stuff over and be like,
He
ha,
just turns and looks at you like, yeah, I did it. What
yeah.
are you gonna do about it?
You need the comedy element in a nightmare film, so there we go.
let's also talk about the red and green, because in the beginning when we had that claw or not beginning but the claw clip, you know, another thing is that I guess that red and green, his sweater is like the hardest thing that the human eye can really see. So you get your like predator, your innate predator you know, or prey response triggered by that, because all of a sudden, like, you know, it's the hardest thing for the human eye to really process.
Yep,
Yeah,
unsettling.
and especially of all the complementary colors, like, you know,
Right.
because you know, blue and orange don't do that. Purple and yellow don't do that. Sorry, I'm an artist here, as if you can't tell.
Yeah, well, I like when you do your color analysis.
Color
Yeah.
theory, we love it.
Yeah, no, I have you can check
And
my
don't we
YouTube
love
channel.
it, folks? Colors, color theory.
But yeah, red and green, you know, sitting next to each other, there is this weird like it really does kind of vibrate in a way that other complementary colors don't. So it makes perfect sense.
It's also, and I'm sure this is not, you know, they didn't think of this, but it just popped into my mind. But, you know, the two women who, you know, Tina at the beginning and then throughout the film, Nancy, perceive him in a way that like the male characters don't. Women don't suffer from colorblindness to nearly the same extent as men do. The most common type of colorblindness in men, red-green colorblindness.
Yeah, no,
Yep.
100%. See, I didn't even think that deeply about it.
Yeah, you need to think more Johnny Depp about it.
Oh God.
My Johnny Depp is just my primal incel sense, when I'm like, morality sucks. No, but there's also I don't know if any of you guys have ever watched Fargo, the TV series, not the
Yes.
Coen Brothers movie, where at the
Mhm.
beginning of it, one of the episodes, Billy Bob Thornton is tormenting Tom Hanks' son. You know, when Tom Hanks' son is the cop in that. And
Yeah, Colin's the son. I can't remember the character.
Not Chet, not
Not
Chet.
the cool one.
Yeah, Colin's the good actor.
We're forgetting that there's a third Hank's son, by the way. I think his name is Chester.
Well, he hasn't put out a rap, so I don't perceive him.
I think they're twins.
I think Chester has to go full all right, because I think that would be really funny to have you know, Colin Hanks, who's like a, you know, a well-respected actor, and then, you know, Chet Hanks or whatever as the like white boy summer one, and then I think it'd be funny to have one that's just like a Ben Shapiro friend or something. That's
You know what's interesting though about Johnny Depp? Since that was his first movie, he actually would go to the movie theater regularly and like do like autograph signings, pay for people's tickets, hang out with them, and watch the movie with fans.
Oh,
I'm like, what the? I'm like, fuck Amber Heard, man. You're ruining my man.
So my Fargo point on this was one of the things that Billy Bob Thornton says in the first season of Fargo when he's tormenting because he's like, did you know like the human eye can see more shades of green than any other color? So he's tormenting him by being like, and at the end of it, he reveals the fact that the human eye can see more shades of green than any other color because when we were just like primordially, I guess, running through jungles, predators would come and try to jump out of the bush and jump out of the trees and take us. So like we're attuned to seeing like evolutionarily, we're attuned to seeing as many shades of green, like more shades of green than anything else. So it's a similar thing, I think, with the red and green and Freddy Krueger, which it's the hardest thing for the eye to process.
Yeah. I remember seeing that sweater for the first time and thinking, that's a fashion statement right there.
Did you shop at, did you go to H&M for that sweater?
Yeah.
Freddy Krueger's like, are you insulting my fashion sense? And starts melting away.
No, I'm getting canceled again.
I haven't seen any of the other Freddy movies. I was confused and disappointed at the end of the film, I'll be honest, because it felt final when she turned her back to him and stepped outside, but then when the convertible cover came down and it was the red and green, I was like, oh, this shit's not over.
No,
But
there's 7. There's a few more sequels, but I will say that if the death scenes get more and more gruesome.
yeah, it just, I don't know, it felt like
Like
I could understand they were setting up a franchise, but it felt good enough that it could have ended there. And if you made more films, they could
Wes
have
hated the ending.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, he did not like. I think it was Bob and you might Bob Shea. Yeah, Bob Shea wanted, who was the producer and owner of New Line Cinema.
The only person who would buy it out of everybody that Wes Craven had talked to,
other than Disney.
Yeah, he was like, we gotta do something cool, tacky for the ending. And Wes was like, no, I don't want that. He's like, but come on. He's like, no, I just wanted to end with, before she opens up the door. No, we gotta do something cool for the kids. And of course, that ending and that obvious blow up doll. Also, too, we're not forgetting the fact that Bob Shea was the leather daddy in Nightmare 2, Freddy's Revenge. So he's responsible for a lot of the bad decision making regarding the Nightmare on Elm Street films. Let's be real. No offense, Bob.
The thing is, though, the strength of Wes Craven as a director, though, was just how like dreamlike that whole ending is too. So you can you just write it off as well as like, oh, this is just another dream. It's like Inception before Inception. It's a dream within a dream, which is you can take it as many ways as you want, which I'm going to compliment Wes Craven for that. So despite the fact that he had to make that ending, and they filmed a bunch of different ones too, if you remember.
Yeah.
But for some reason, that's the one that kept.
Dude, Freddy's Revenge was so literally gay in my fave.
I mean, I think I kind of liked the ending because so she says, I want all my friends back and I want my life back. So she's kind of taking back the energy that she's given him and then gets that. And then you realize it's still like a different kind of dream. I feel like no matter what, she can kind of still get trapped in different layers of dreams, which is something that happens to me a lot. Like I'll like think I woke up and be like, oh, thank God that dream's over. And then I'm in another dream. So I kind of understood that as that, but I also understand that that's kind of like a cathartic point, I guess, to be like, I'm taking back my power. And, it seems like it works in that moment. But I feel like I would be disappointed if that's the only thing that could, that's like it's like a kid's fairy tale kind of. You can just say, I'm taking back my power. And then Freddy Krueger has to be like, what? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
That's what the part 3 is the best. Because they get superpowers.
Oh yeah, like they all have their own. Like they really could have went more with the Dream Warrior aspect of it all.
Yeah,
like created their own verse. But
the 4th one just completely like oh yeah, remember how cool that 3rd one was? Yeah. That
pretty much.
Yeah.
So Kristina, I clipped this to talk to you about it.
Okay.
This is a clip that I found on the makeup that they did originally and the process of coming up with the Freddy Krueger makeup.
Yeah.
And I thought that you'd be a good person to talk about that with,
Yeah.
in terms of at least like really amazing like special effects makeup, I guess, at the time.
Yeah.
The nose and upper lip piece, separate cheek pieces, a forehead piece, and then the back of the head piece. I don't know, I've lost count now. But there was a separate ear because it was supposed to look like his ear was burned off. So his real ear was under the appliance and the fake ear was on top. So there was like a lot of holes in it. So when it was backlit, you could see light through it. And they were all just pre-painted. So when I got on set, it'd be easy to just blend them together with makeup around the seams. So the whole process it started out taking about 3.5 hours to put on, which is a long time to sit in the morning. He would fall asleep sometimes. And I just wake him up when I was done.
Being under all that makeup, I was sort of liberated, and I was able to really perform with quotes again, because I had just hit that point as a film actor where you really start getting into that indulgent behavioral work. And, you know, the more you watch that film acting, you can see a lot of stuff that we call real is just this sort of behavioral soap opera acting. You see people taking all this time now in film acting, especially in talking head television, where everybody takes their moment, as they say on Ally McBeal. And that's not how people are in real life. People talk a mile a minute. They're on their cell phones. They're overlapping. They're interrupting each other like Italians do. They're doing those parentheticals. And what Freddy did for me was I was able to physicalize, move differently than Robert Englund could. I was able to pose, you know, kind of like, you know, music videos has embraced that kind of posing kind of thing again. I was able to make myself look bigger than I am. I was able to make myself look tougher than I am. I was able to play myself older than I was when I began Freddy, certainly. I changed my voice for the role. And every once in a while, I was able to use that clown element, as you suggested, the cruel clown, kind of mixing that kind of vaudeville energy with a kind of sadistic, you know, undercurrent, which was really fun to do.
Yeah, so I think that's incredibly interesting that he's able to really, because I mean, you can think about it almost as a, you know, some kind of shield, I guess, something over you that you can kind of with all of the makeup, and on top of that, like all of the special effects and everything else, he's kind of hidden behind that, and you can kind of start letting yourself go in that sense. And Wes Craven's, you know, talked about it a lot, that he was looking for someone that could really harness that evil inside of them, like whether or not they're like a, you know, which he is, like a nice person in real life, like someone that realizes there is like innately evil in all of us, like as an actor you can harness and bring out for this character. And I think that Robert Englund really tackled that in a way that it'll be hard, I think, for some actors to do. Most definitely. Like,
yeah. What's interesting about the makeup is that how different Freddy looked between movie to movie. Now, I think that was Kevin Yeager that was speaking, I believe, who did most of Freddy's makeup. Behind him was new Nightmares Freddy look, and then the little baby Freddy puppet from Nightmare 5. But they really had to go through different levels of the makeup to really show like what would Freddy look like what could evil be produced from this. They actually tried having where you can see his teeth, but it just wouldn't look right. And they would remove stuff and add stuff with each sequel to his makeup. But regardless, Robert Englund was such a good sport. Very talkative, very chill, very relaxed. At times he would fall asleep. But I really do think that the makeup is what makes the character, what makes Freddy. Because without that burnt skin, without that glove, without the teeth even, the chin, the nose, because Robert Englund's got very distinct features. I feel like he has the perfect face for Freddy Krueger, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. And you can see his face behind all of the stuff that's on top of it. Like you can still see that it's him playing Freddy Krueger. Like as soon as his face starts being expressive and his body movements start being expressive, like I don't know. It's
Yeah.
fascinating.
Also, that was one of the things about when Jackie Lee Haley was cast as Freddy Krueger in the remake, which we really shouldn't talk about because it's terrible. But one of the things that he doesn't have is that distinct profile. He just looks like a weird shriveled fish thing.
And it was CGI makeup too. They didn't actually put like any prosthetics.
Oh, really?
To him.
Yeah.
With Robert Englund, they were able to do that because I mean he was such a good sport about it. But also too, like with each movie, Freddy had a slightly different look to his makeup. So like Nightmare 3, you can really see Robert Englund's face more. In Nightmare 5, he looks a little bit older and withered and tired or whatever. The Out of Dark Circles, that was about it. And New Nightmare, he looks like almost like a completely different Freddy in a way. But
it was
the
great
first Nightmare makeup was a really good baseline to use to go off with if you're like someone who's like if they were to have someone new but do Freddy makeup. But Kevin Yeager is probably like one of the greatest like special effects makeup artists in horror movie history.
I thought like what he was saying too about putting on the makeup, being in the full Freddy costume and just being able to get into the character by virtue of looking at himself and saying like, okay, I am now Freddy, right? And I can get into that mindset. And it makes me wonder, is that lost with the increasing implementation of CGI? Like if you're putting on a full green suit and just standing there as a normal person on a set, is it more difficult to get into the mind of the character? Do you actually feel like you're embodying the character in that moment? I don't know. It's probably more difficult. So it take like an amazing actor to be able to just be standing there in the Green Man. Always
like there's also
Doug
like
Jones.
method actors too, but still like we all know how Jared Leto can be.
Yeah, well, we also got to look at like Doug Jones, for example, who's actually done both. Because remember, he wore the suit, the weird green suit as Silver Surfer in Fantastic Four 2, and most of his movies he's in like actual makeup, including Star Trek Discovery, and he's phenomenal. And okay, I don't really remember Silver Surfer. I've seen the Fantastic Four movie. I can't tell you anything bad happened in it.
But makeup really makes like the character like, and Ray's got a good point. Like with all the CGI, with all of like the like putting the dots all over your face now, like I feel like something like that is lost because the only time you really see makeup being done is like on women in film these days.
And Doug Jones.
Yes.
Shout out to Doug Jones, who also should come on the podcast.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you have like the Andy Serkis kind of thing, I guess, who
who actually is good. I mean, I'm gonna give him credit, where credit's due.
But I mean, it's really kind of acting where it's as Gollum, he was able to like literally put himself into freezing cold water in New Zealand and like hunch like this, and he's really his style of acting, and he was in like the new Planet of the Apes movies too. Like his style of acting is. Yeah, it's like, it's all physicality. And so when it comes to like the CGI kind of stuff, like it's all physicality because then all of a sudden, you can transfer that that vision of it, I think, into. But
they also got the spots on his face to kind of capture the facial expressions, which he is very emotive. But, as Gollum, as Caesar. So I mean, there is he's kind of the exception to the CG versus.
I think that it's a specific kind of acting, right? Like he could probably teach his own actors doing CGI class at a college and get a bunch of actors to play that, but that's closer to being kind of a stunt double in a lot of ways. I think it is to being like an actor, which I mean, in all fairness to the Freddy Krueger character, that's what they had envisioned. Like it's not like that style of acting. I think they were like, oh, well, back then you could act like this. Now you can act like that. They were looking for more of something like that. And then all of a sudden, Robert Englund showed up and really blew them away.
Yeah. You know what I wonder, though, with all the CGI, if certain movies are becoming less frightening because of the effects are not as practical. Like if you notice in a lot of the new Alien movies, the xenomorphs are all like CGI now. And I'm like, that's not as scary as having a 7 foot tall African portray, the main alien, the main xenomorph or whatever. Like that was, to me, that actually, when I was young, I would watch Alien with my grandfather and Aliens, and that kind of spooked me when I was
built
young.
that beautiful Geiger costume,
Yeah, and that same like with Nightmare on Elm Street, like with Freddy, you have that believable burnt skin, but with the remake, it's all CGI. They're like, we wanted to make him look more like a real burnt victim. I'm like, yeah, but that's still not as scary as what they did with Robert Englund's makeup.
Yeah, well, and you definitely get into that also with a similar genre coming up at the same, or subgenre coming up at the same time, which is zombie movies. Tom Savini putting like the full extent of his talents into something like Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, which he considers his and really, I mean, inventing it as he goes along, but like inventing this genre, I guess, like with practical effects, and really like you can watch clips and clips of him like interviews, like what he was talking about, like all the things he did, like literally himself jumping through like a glass window, or in Dawn of the Dead, or going to a coroner and just like asking the coroner a bunch of questions about what dead bodies look like when they're kind of decaying, and turning that into like every zombie in Day of the Dead being different. And like turns around and he goes, this is my masterpiece. Like, so it's a similar thing, I think, with something like this, where it's Robert Englund in full makeup, kind of as this, as Freddy Krueger, versus like the special effects, and CGI stuff that we have now that, depersonalizes it for sure.
I also like how they did a lot of the special effects for like the death scenes in the movie. I think with Tina's, they had to do like the make like the ceiling, everything was filmed like this, and on like a slightly like a room that was slightly like moving, I think, perhaps.
Yes, they built the set. They used it for both the Tina death scene and the Johnny Depp death scene where they had the blood. That was just the room was upside down and they're just pouring the blood out.
Yeah, and then the blood kind of went like sideways a little bit or something like that, which they're like, that's not how it's supposed to happen. But oh well.
It looked great though. It really did. And that's also the beauty of doing these things with accidents, where you can find there's happy accidents in these things. I switched to digital with my artwork a few years ago, and I was driving me crazy because everything was just so perfect. And I switched to a different brush on the thing where it creates these happy accidents, and I'm very happy with that. So I appreciate when you see on screen that kind of happy accident by doing practical effects.
Yeah.
And I also think that one thing is that I couldn't stop thinking about during the Johnny Depp death scene, Rick and Morty, where he pushes one of the Ricks into the portal blender. Which number one? Well, obviously there's a Freddy Krueger episode where he's like, "You can run, but you can't hide, bitch," which I think is what we talk about. But also there's the episode where it's like the fascist episode of Rick and Morty, where evil Morty becomes the president of the Citadel, and they push one of the Ricks into the portal blender, and then they splatter with blood. And I was like, the fuck, did Johnny Depp get sent to the portal blender? Or the blender portal, whatever.
Which was actually inspired by The Shining. Oh, the
blood.
Yeah. That was where they got the idea from, and kind of went in a whole unique direction, which I love.
People are always like, red wave is coming next election cycle, and I'm like, you know what I think about when there's a red wave? And I always share that gift from The Shining. And they're like, that's not funny. I'm like, I'd rather have blue waves crashing on me than all that blood. I'm sorry.
Matthew Film Guy says Scary Terry. I love that fucking episode of where he's like, "You can run, but you can't hide, bitch."
Oh, bitch.
Like, now, do you guys know how like Robert Englund did like the Freddy voice? It was all like in the first Nightmare films, they didn't really do much with his voice. Like half of the time it's mostly his regular voice with a few little tweaks here and there. But by the end of the film, there were some times where his voice sounded deeper. Now there's this thing called Very Speed, and there's even a whole video of him talking about this, where they would make him sound more like deep and menacing with more bass. So he's like, well, if that slows down my voice, I need to talk faster. So instead of saying, "Welcome to prime time, bitch, ha ha ha," he'd be like, "Welcome to prime time, bitch, ah ha ha ha," or something like that. so that when they would edit it and with the very speed, he would sound just, regular deep voice and not slow bass voice. So, and they kept that with the sequels. Sometimes I forget that Robert Englund's voice sounds like the way it did in the first film.
And fun fact, Ben Shapiro does the opposite thing for his show.
Well, I've noticed that also with podcasts in general. Like, I'll watch a show and it sounds normal, and then like you listen to it on a podcast. I don't know what the beginning of the intro is that a lot of people have on their podcast, but it's like, and you like listen through their whole intro, and it's like, is my app broken? Like, what?
Yep.
The audio version of it. One more thing that I really liked in this is that the settings change, like based on the dreams. So obviously when Nancy's in school and she falls asleep, which is kind of a callback to I think that a lot of that scene is a callback to Halloween. Like when she falls asleep, she's in a school, like she's in her school again, and she's walking through the halls, and then they have the the hall, like, do you have a hall pass? But like,
screw your pass.
Which is why I love the teacher after she wakes up. It's just like, you need a hall pass.
Also, too, I think that was Bob Shaye's sister playing the teacher, because she's known to do movies as well, especially for New Line Cinema, because she gets to work for her brother.
Wow, that's just nepotism all over the place.
Oh yeah.
Well, New Line wasn't a film production company; they were the distributing company at this up until Nightmare on Elm Street. Like, this is the first movie they really produced. Up until then, they were distributing. They were like distributors for John Waters. So like all the old John Waters movies.
Pink Flamingo.
Yep.
Like, yeah, because Nightmare on Elm Street is actually an independent horror film. Like, people forget that it's an indie. Like, New Line Cinema was like an indie company. But with the success of Nightmare on Elm Street, it became this big movie production company. I remember the first New Line Cinema movie I ever watched was Austin Powers, International Man of Mystery.
Lord of the Rings wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Freddy Krueger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, the first time I ever really remember paying attention to New Line was Lord of the Rings, when it was the the intro and yeah, every one of those movies.
People are making Michael Myers jokes now, like about Halloween Kills. They're like, he did not say groovy, baby, or shall we shag now or shall we shag later? And I'm like, wrong Michael Myers, people.
See Andy the other day, our original episode art, when we were gonna do because we did a Halloween episode a couple days before the new movie comes out, which I haven't watched yet, but I probably need to, although I haven't heard good things. So his episode art was just a picture of Michael Myers, like, Austin Powers Michael Myers, and he drew it and sent it, and it was like Halloween, and he's like, oh, did I get the wrong Michael Myers?
It works. I feel bad. I have a friend named Michael Myers, so I'm like, imagine the bully named Fred Krueger. Wes Craven's bully.
And bullying that Michael Myers, like that would be pretty amazing. Just your friend Michael Myers getting bullied by a bully named Fred Krueger.
Yeah,
who got bullied by Jason Voorhees.
Yeah.
That. I'm probably gonna wrap this up in a second. Andy, can you send me the Fresh Prince link?
Yeah.
Matthew Film Guy recommended that we play it off with that. But this is our fifth movie stream in this week. Like, we did we've done a lot. Tropic Thunder, Dawn of the Dead, Halloween, which was crazy that it was this week. And I was also on Varn Vlog, so I guess I include that as one of the things. But it was like 5 days of streaming in a week, which for if I was on Twitch would be just a normal week for me.
Yeah.
But and then I also do Ben Show on Monday. So after I'm done with this, it's going to be nothing but like creating episode art. So there you have it. And I just sent it to you, Forrest, if you saw that. But yeah, so yeah, this has been a long week for both of us. And I haven't even really done any of next week's artwork for the show because I don't remember what we're doing. But it all starts to blur together after a while because I'm also redesigning Ben Burgess's YouTube channel look thing. So, and oh god, I got to finish up that cover. I do book covers too, by the way.
That's cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
busy.
Yeah. My next one's coming out in December. Yeah, or is it the one? No, November. That's right, because that's when the Duretti comes out. See, it's all confusing.
All right, so I'll come back and have everyone plug their stuff and give final thoughts after playing a couple seconds of this, but or a couple minutes of this. But this is the DJ Jazzy's Jeff and Fresh Prince, everybody's favorite Will Smith rapper, doing their A Nightmare on My Street video. But yeah, we have next week we have Texas Chainsaw Massacre on Tuesday, which I just watched last night, and I'm after watching Nightmare on Elm Street, where I was like, oh, this is a fun movie. I actually haven't watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre ever. So last night I watched it and was thinking like, well, since it's the 70s, it's probably like a lot of more practical effects. This might be like a more fun movie to watch. It was not.
Part 2 is hilariously fun. Like give part 2 a chance. Like watch it before we go on, so you can be ready on that.
I don't know if I'll have time, but we're only gonna be on for an hour on Tuesday, which is for me a nice break.
Yeah. I love this is way better than the Fat Boy song, let me tell you. Way better. Even though Robert Englund's rapping on the Fat Boy song, well, it still just has like, my name is Freddy and I'm here to say, and I'm just like, no, just stop.
Oh god. That was worse than Freddy's Dead.
but I just love the fact that it's got the same bass line as the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air theme song and the hook from the score of Nightmare on Elm Street. Just put them together and it's just like, Nightmare on My Street.
Also, that Freddy doesn't look like Freddy. It's like, what the hell? No. I'm like, that looks like Billy Idol or something.
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
Especially from Cyberpunk.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe Will Smith. Maybe all white people look the same. They just look like that.
I don't blame him.
Well, it's not. I don't think it's not like affiliated with the movie Nightmare on Elm Street at all. Like it's really just. So
I also like that when they're in the movie theater, Freddy shows up with a date with Bride of Frankenstein. Just in the background.
I'm disappointed that they don't have the Jazzy Jeff thing where Freddy Krueger just throws him through a door. Like they had the recurring bit on Fresh Prince.
This is before Fresh Prince, so
Yeah,
before that bit.
We'd have to assume that bit came from somewhere. All right, so jumping to final thoughts. I guess starting with Kristina. I'm sure you'll have the most to say about this. You've thought about it. You recommended it. Let's go.
Yeah. So here's the thing, guys. Freddy Krueger is the greatest horror movie villain ever. He's got charm. He's got charisma. He's got personality. And ladies, he's single. Just kidding. But I do feel like Wes Craven really created something special with Nightmare on Elm Street. In a world of Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers, silent but lethal killers, Freddy Krueger's got the personality. He's got this, the swagger. He actually stands out. And the fact that the concept of the whole dying in your sleep thing, this is true. This is a true cancel culture. The fact that Wes Craven came up with the concept of like, what if someone killed you in your dreams? That's, that's pretty genius, in my opinion. And of course,
he's tapping into that childhood fear. And I do think that makes it a more accurate and kind of amazing horror film than something like, I really enjoyed watching Halloween. I think that I think that that like, oh well, you have sex, you die, which is not what John Carpenter set out to do, but is kind of the lesson that the horror, the slasher boom that came after him kind of took that lesson. That's their one big thing. Like, oh well, he is saying like there's a morality to it, and if you have sex, you die. Well, the morality to this, like you fall asleep, you die, is a much more accurate, like because you know what John Carpenter claims to have set out to do is create like a thing where it could be anybody that dies. Like there's no right or wrong to it, which I think Halloween does, but the fact that sex is involved and the fact that, you know, people that had made porn kind of watched it and said, hey, guess what? We can make a movie like that with like lots of sex, lots of like women's bodies, but you know, they're getting slashed. And it will bring out like both that violence that men, you know, and women too, but like, you know, the human emotions of violence, the human emotions of sex, like sexuality kind of all together into that thing. Like that's the perfect genre for it. I like the, you know, you fall asleep, you die thing, because as a child, it just taps into that like childhood, you know, the fear, I guess, fear of these really trippy and crazy dreams that we have.
And what's great is that they did not like Wes Craven didn't set out to sexualize Nancy either as like a movie heroine too. So
Only
there's
Johnny
that.
Depp.
Yeah. But I do say like this is definitely a movie worth watching. If you have never seen A Nightmare on Elm Street, it's worth the watch for sure. Even some of the sequels are good, except for Freddy's Dead.
All right, Ray, I want you to cancel Freddy Krueger right now as your final.
Yeah, thank you. I'm ready to cancel him. One, Freddy is a pedophile murderer. I feel like you can't really get worse than that. So, Freddy canceled. As an
They never. No, he was only just a child killer, not a pedophile.
Yes, because apparently.
Look at this background. What's he doing there between her legs in that bathtub? He had
well,
no
you guys
business.
Are between her legs right now.
No business being there.
Do
This is not. I had
no
no
business being there either.
Do you want to answer for the fact that her, if you look at the actual screen, you know, one leg's here, one leg's here. I don't know.
I was coerced into this situation. I had no agency over this. So, you know, I
and
think
also
that
too, she just recently watched the film for the first time.
I did. I was very offended.
Like one leg's here.
I was very offended by the film as a narcoleptic. I thought it was ableist. I fall asleep all the time. I have no choice in that matter. But you know, even as a narcoleptic, I don't fall asleep as much as these damn kids. Like, keep your eyes open, Johnny Depp. 15 minutes, you could have stayed awake and not died. But overall, I hate horror films. I actually liked this one. I thought it was good. I thought, you know, playing into making him almost an unavoidable villain because you can't stop. You know, you have to sleep at some point. Was
you're prescribed Adderall.
Yeah.
This show was brought to you by
coffee and enough.
But I thought it was really well done. I thought he was like a scary villain, but I mean, obviously the film has aged, so it's not like scary in the sense where I would have to sleep in my mom's bed after watching it.
You might have to for Nightmare 5.
Oh, I will not be watching that. Don't worry. I have no intention of watching any more of these films.
I'm bringing you all back for, you know, we're gonna have a Nightmare 2 or Nightmare 2 stream, Nightmare 3. I'm just gonna bring you back for all.
Yeah, the gayest horror film of all time. Let's go.
Well, I mean, if it's gay, I'm in. I'll watch it. But...
it's so great.
It went over many people's heads whenever it came out because, like, you know, you just like at the time nobody got it. But like looking back, like knowing things that I know now, I'm like, oh yeah, that is gay. Oh, I totally missed that.
Weirdly, I sleep well every day after my legal.
Yeah, same.
I'm also prescribed legal amphetamines. Is probably why I had and not for narcolepsy though, for my lack of focus.
I'm on trazodone, so that'll help me sleep.
Sorry, my cat was trying to chew my wires, so I had to wrangle her a little bit. I had to hurt her.
You have no idea. My so every single one of my wires has cat bite marks on it. Like my keyboard, like just everything that I've bought because when I lived with my ex-girlfriend, we had these two cats, and it was when I started streaming for Ben, and you know we had gotten them as kittens, and they would just bite through. And we had two cats. We had a bunny. And the bunnies
are terrible chewies.
Well, so the bunny taught both cats to chew wires. And then at one point, like the bunny
Sanders, no.
Yeah, it was Bunny Sanders, and he tragically ate cat litter one day and passed away. which it was really heartbreaking that happened. But I remember, like, I really think that cats are like sentient the same way that human beings are, because that day the cat that was like best friends with him growing up ran through every single thing and just bit wires, like as if he was saying, like, this is for you. And
pouring one out for my homie.
yeah, bite. I'm really determined to like keep all wires away from Audrey, because like a puppy is much more destructive than a cat can be,
or a bunny.
Well, no, I mean, a bunny can be pretty destructive, but like, so it's like I'm determined to keep Audrey away from wires, but she bites my headphones nonstop.
She's much bigger too, so she got more chomping power.
She grew a few inches and like quite a few pounds between when I got her like 3 weeks ago and now, like.
Oh no! I look at all your pictures, man.
Yeah.
It's just like she's getting bigger.
I saw somebody with like I think what she is like a Black and Town coonhound mixed with something else. So I saw somebody like with a full grown like actual coonhound that wasn't mixed with anything. That was this old lady pulling the dog like this, like couldn't keep up with it, and I was like, please don't grow that thing. All right, Andy, you want to give some final thoughts?
Yeah, this was a lot of fun because, like I said, Nightmare on Elm Street is one of my favorite movies. It's the only movie I've ever dressed up for to go see. I dressed up as Freddy Krueger,
is Freddy Krueger
somebody's mom to death in Texas by placing my clawed hand on her shoulder during a dream.
Is Freddy Krueger the one horror movie character you've drawn twice? Because you drew it last year for Ben when he had Freddy DeBoer on.
I've drawn him many times, but yes, in recent.
But I mean, for episode art.
Yes, yeah, for episode art, twice now, and hopefully we can do it another 9 times, to get all the sequels and remake.
# 10 seasons. This show is gonna last 10.
Yeah, bring me on for all the Nightmare sequels. I'm ready.
Of course, listen. I'm not gonna have any other people on for those, unless it's Robert Englund, and then he can come on.
Yeah, we'll have to have him on the actual panel with us, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, although I do think if for 2, if we have a gay co-host, like that would be much.
I mean, yeah,
like somebody, yeah, because like it really, there's so much like layers that I just don't get. But I can.
There's stuff that I get.
Yeah,
I'll do the gay analysis. I'll watch it. I'll watch it with a queer eye.
Yeah,
we can watch it together.
Movie though, but
queer eye for the straight guy.
Yeah, clearly. He's like, there's something inside of me, and I just don't know what it is. And I'm like,
and the actor in real life is gay too, by the way.
Yeah, he did not want to come out yet either.
Yeah, it's an interesting film. Like not good, but interesting. 3's actually good. Like 3 might be the best. And then it's kind of downhill from there. Don't get me wrong. There are wonderful parts of 4, 5, and even Freddy's Dead. Freddy's Dead's terrible, but still, there are moments, where Freddy's Dead's worth it. New Nightmare though, basically is Scream before Scream even came out. So absolutely worth checking out. And Freddy versus Jason, everything you want in a movie called Freddy versus Jason. It's it doesn't misadvertise. It's there's nothing wrong with this movie at all. It's not good, but it's everything you want in a movie like that. So, and then the sequel, the remake is just completely skippable. We don't need to talk about that. Just know it exists.
So I wanted to quickly before closing out, kind of put this, I guess, in the chronology of our as Wes Craven did with Scream, like our slasher rules, right? Like, so we started out, I think, with our Halloween stream, which is like, the originality of the, like, if you have sex, you die rule, which obviously not on purpose. And we've gone into that. We've delved into it in detail, but like, it continues on with Friday the 13th. It continues on with, a lot of these, less thought out, more B-movie slasher films. So this kind of opens us up to, if you fall asleep, you die, which I think is the most terrifying of all of the possible iterations of this, because you can't stop from sleeping, and like, things get number one, things already get weird if you try to stop yourself from sleeping. There's like days and days where it's like. But the third rule, I think, that starts off in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is our next stream, hint on on Tuesday, tune in, is the property rule, right? Like, you go into someone else's house or you invade their property and you die. So I think that this rule is the most unavoidable, which probably makes it the most terrifying. So it's in that chronology, I guess that's my final thought on this. If anybody has any thoughts on that. All right. Well, Kristina, how can we find you? Or how can we find you?
Yeah,
we're coming for you.
Yeah. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Kristina, twitch.tv/Kristina as well. I try to stream like every day. I stream about politics, makeup, pop culture. I also do a cosplay every now and then. I know it's October. I'm slacking. I haven't even done a cosplay yet, and I need to. So, yeah.
It was really funny if you had come dressed as Freddy Krueger for this.
So here's the thing. I got someone who's sending me a glove and the fedora. So for Nightmare 2, I'm going to be ready.
I borrowed my dad's when I was a kid.
Oh.
All right, Rayyvana.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter, Rayyvana TTV. You can see me every weeknight at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time because I live in civilization and I use the correct time zones. At twitch.tv/Rayyvana. You can see me every Thursday at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time on TYT's Twitch channel for my show Rayy-Actions. And you can see my daily videos for Rebel HQ on YouTube.
Which Anna agreed to come on at some point and do a movie episode, which, working at Jacobin, I was doing the editing for weekends. So recently I messaged her and I was like, hey, would you ever want to come on for a movie stream? I know it's not. So I've yet to figure that out, but I hope that happens at some point.
I hope as well. That would be fun.
Yeah. Well, she came on. So I kind of started out when we were doing Give Them an Argument. Like I don't work there currently, but like when we were doing it, like I was doing movie streams, or we were doing movie streams every single week. And on Ben Burgess's birthday, we did a stream that ended up being 4 hours. I didn't plan it being 4 hours, but that's what it ended up being. We talked about The Shining for 4 hours with so Anna hadn't seen it and came on and was talking, like giving her first thoughts on it. Kale Brooks was on it. Like, so it ended up being just
Kale had like 40,000 slides.
Well, Kale was torturing me. Kale, because Kale was like loving the fact that he didn't have to be a producer for once. So he sent me an entire drive thing full of slides. I was just like, put these slides on, and kept like made me go through them one by one because he was like, for once I'm not.
And as we're going through the movie, I'm discussing the color theory of every single scene because that's the brilliance of The Shining is the color palettes that are picked for every single moment and what the characters are wearing and the meanings of what that is, like with neutral colors versus complementary color. It's yeah.
You should have Anna on for like a Stanley Kubrick, like some type of like film, because I remember like she always would talk about like his films a lot. So like another film.
He's our avatar for the show. Which
we haven't done the Killers yet.
I like the Killers. I haven't. I feel like the one I haven't seen is Barry Lyndon. Also, I've never. That's the one Kubrick film I think I haven't seen.
That's I can know if you have a library card, you can watch it for free.
Nice.
Having fun isn't hard when you got a library card.
Oh, God.
I'll send you a link later.
People have sent me the meme of that, but then it's like there's cocaine on the library card.
Also, when it comes to his Stanley Kubrick films, Lolita is canceled.
Much like Freddy Krueger, Lolita. All right, well, I'm gonna leave it here. We're gonna do Texas Chainsaw Massacre on Tuesday. Watch these two films back to back, kind of a little bit. Thinking, 70s slasher film, 70s, like it probably won't be as traumatizing. No, like there's no other movie that I've watched so far for this show has been quite as traumatizing as watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre. We'll talk about that with the girls from These Are Bad Movies, and of course, I'm calling the episode "These Are Bad Chainsaws," which I liked as a title. So with that, I'm just gonna say, left is best.